Hey there! What brings you here? Was it by chance? Or did you make a choice? These are some questions we might ask when exploring the concept of free will. But if we ask in the context of video games, then we're talking about player agency. That is, what you can do in the game. Or as games researcher Juul said in his seminal work Half Real, listing what he saw as the fundamental components of a game, the player exerts effort in order to influence the outcome. The player feels emotionally attached to the outcome, and thus we take action. This action will have consequences, says the title of a more contemporary article published in the International Journal of Computer Game Research. Without this, Juul says, it could hardly be considered a game at all. You're just along for the ride. And rides can be fun, but player agency allows for games as expression, games as competition, games as self-discovery. These are some of the reasons we understand why games can be fun, as explored in the mechanics, dynamics, and aesthetics game design and research framework developed over 2 decades ago. Let's explore this further with some examples. Player agency is an important element in video games, but it can mean different things in different games. For example, in games like The Elder Scrolls V Skyrim, while there are some elements of linear narrative progression, the focus on a more open-ended and emergent gameplay experience provides for a wide variety of player choice, in the form of open-world exploration, emergent interaction, and dynamic narrative. Other more contemporary, action-driven role-playing games like Last Epoch offer different forms of player choice that match the core gameplay loop and aesthetic of the game. In simpler games like Tetris and Minesweeper, the player is given a very limited amount of agency over the outcome, and yet both of these kinds of games can be fun in their own way. In the case of the Stanley Parable, a somewhat obfuscated level of player agency can result in a more enriched experience where the player goes off script and is rewarded for doing so by discovering something unexpected. By contrast, in the steampunk narrative-driven Bioshock, restricting the player to a specific narrative direction allows the game designer a tighter control over the progression of the player through the game and the narrative experience as a whole. Yet other games have used the limits of player agency to enhance the aesthetic experience, such as in the post-apocalyptic horror survival This War of Mine, or the popular horror series Five Nights at Freddy's. The broader, more abstract and nebulous topic of free will has been explored in a large body of literature dating back some centuries. To quote the famous philosopher, historian and essayist David Hume, but to proceed in this reconciling project with regard to the question of liberty and necessity, the most contentious question of metaphysics, the most contentious science, this is not the goal here. The topic of video game research, in contrast, is a more recent development, with a somewhat more limited but still quite extensive body of academic work from which we can consider this idea. In a 1998 thesis, Simon Fraser University student Cindy Porembo wrote of player agency as an attributed, contextualized power to effect meaningful change. More recently, in 2019, PhD candidate at York University Sarah Stang elaborated on the idea in the International Journal of Computer Game Research. True player agency lies not within pre-scripted video game narratives, but in the player's interpretations of the game text, in their engagement with fan communities, and in the exchanges that occur between fans and developers.
Good. Let's get this over with.
Sure.
In games with a broad scope of player agency, there is some overlap with the concept of the ludic sublime, a term framed by its originator Daniel Vella as a formal aesthetic mode within games, and described by Philip Shaw, Professor of Romantic Studies at the University of Leicester, as that which marks the limits of reason and expression together with a sense of what might lie beyond these limits. Indeed, this accurately describes my experience when first playing games like The Elder Scrolls V Skyrim, stepping out of the narrowly scripted introductory tutorial to be presented with a boundless expanse, suggestive of near infinite possibilities for exploration, and constituting a whole beyond the grasp of the imagination. In conclusion, player agency is a fundamental element of what makes something a game, as well as what makes it fun. It can manifest in a variety of ways, and each game will require its own unique balancing act in deciding how to use it. I hope you have learned something from joining me in this brief exploration of player agency in video games.